Hey everyone, welcome back to the Bravo Docket. So we are going to jump right in where we left off, but before we do, wanted to just let you guys know that we're going to be taking Memorial Day week off, so don't expect a new episode next week. Also, it's my bachelorette party this weekend, so I definitely will not be recording anything, and Angela is joining me. We're going off to New Orleans. So yeah, legal things will not be on my mind. You know what I mean. We will be lawful, but legal things will not be on my mind. Also, I am officially a California licensed attorney. So I can finally say that I practice here and I know the law.
Okay, I am so excited. I'm taking a break from packing to edit, and I'm the reason this episode is late, and I'm just grateful for everyone's patience. But I am recording this later, and I just have to say, Cesie, I am so proud of you. Our girl is barred in New York and California, and that is two of the most difficult states in the entire United States to get a law license in, and I cannot wait to celebrate you for your bachelorette, and I'm just honored to be included. This is such an accomplishment. I'm so excited for you. Can't wait to go to New Orleans, and I'm just so excited. But okay, back to Erika Girardi's declaration about why she allegedly thought it was reasonable to contact the Secret Service and threaten Marco with jail time.
All right, let's get into it.
Okay, paragraph 49, quote, I was shocked when I heard Leia's explanation and saw the list. In my view, there were too many transactions. I had performed 21 shows in 2015 and 11 or 12 shows in 2016. Yet there were over 100 transactions in that 2-year period.
I also believe that the expenses were too high. I did not know how much Marco had charged for each of our costume orders or alteration requests. However, I remembered that Mr. Psela had said the 2 Amex charges I had received that day and the day before for $4,500 and $5,000 respectfully seemed too high. Yet I saw dozens of charges in 2015 and 2016 that were much higher in amount and ranged from over $5,000 to over $10,000 per transaction.
This commentary, I'm going to be curious to see these charges and how they're marked in there, because if they're just looking at the Amex card transactions and it just says Marco on there and it doesn't say what's for, a design concept, what's for a fitting, what's for alterations, what's for the, I don't know how they were charging for each of these things. It sounds like she didn't really know either.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. In addition, the Marco transactions on my Amex card amounted to $303,279 in 2015 and $631,240 in 2016, or almost $1 million total for the 2 years. I did not understand how Marco could have charged twice as much in 2016 than in 2015.
Leia and I noticed that there was not a December 1st, 2016 charge on my Amex statement, but there was still a November 30th, 2016 charge, even though Mr. Psela had represented that both charges had been returned.
I was in disbelief and deeply hurt. I cannot believe that a friend whom I had trusted and relied on for the past 2 years had betrayed my trust and taken advantage of my financial situation.
At 3:50 p.m. on December 1st, 2016, Chris emailed me 19 PDF documents under the subject line, quote, 2015 invoices. Mr. Psela again emailed me at 4:33 p.m. under the subject line, recent 2016. This email had one attachment and a message stating, attached are sales I have downloaded from our credit card processor while I wait on invoices.
I did not review the attached documents in detail. However, I noted that there were only about 20 documents and not enough invoices to account for all of the transactions that Leia had shown me from my Amex account. What do you think of that comment, Cesie, in this declaration?
She needs to look at it. If you're complaining about the fact that you think it's too many transactions or you're disputing the charges, look at them. Read it. Look at it. Stop burying your head in the sand.
I know she has to say that because there were invoices for everything. So she has to be like, oh, it was just negligence on my part. This wasn't part of some scheme. Best case scenario, she negligently came after this guy who she just a few paragraphs before quoted as a friend, which I'm really interested to see how Erika defines friend, if she does at any point in a deposition or something.
Oh, I don't think she will.
Yeah.
So I forwarded Mr. Psela 2 emails to Leia on December 2nd, 2016. Leia shared my view that there were not enough invoices to account for all of the Marco charges on my Amex account.
Leia, you in danger, girl. She's not doing anything to help her assistants out. Okay. So this is where she begins to talk about in her declaration that she's filed with the court under penalty of perjury. And it says, early December 2016, initial contact with Secret Service. Based on the unauthorized charges on my Amex account and Mr. Sala's text to Mikey, I decided to report my concerns to the Secret Service.
I knew to contact the Secret Service and not local law enforcement because I was told during my interview for the 2009 investigation of my former esthetician that the Secret Service investigated credit card fraud.
Which there's lots of different agencies that investigate credit card fraud, and she could have made a report with her local police station and they could have forwarded it to the DA,
I mean, but if she already had that contact, why wouldn't you go to the top guy,
I mean, giving her the benefit of the doubt, because that's what we do here at the Bravo docket. Yeah, if I had a contact at the Secret Service and I thought someone was scamming me, I would call the Secret Service. I mean,
right.
I got in touch with Robert Savage, who was the U.S. Secret Service special agent in charge at the time. I had met Mr. Savage once or twice socially and knew he was with the Secret Service.
Yeah, that's like when people text you and are like, oh, do you know any attorneys that do blah, blah, blah? She was just in that circle. So
personally, I don't believe her, but I understand.
You don't believe that she met him once or twice?
I really do think that Erika liked to throw her weight around with Tom's cronies. And we know that Tom and Mr. Savage had some business dealings. I believe that she had met him a couple times, but I think her intent was to throw her weight around and get her way through Tom's contacts.
Oh, yeah. I don't think we're disagreeing. I'm just saying I think it's believable. She met him a few times and was like, I'm going to use the guy that I know. I did not know that Tom Girardi had agreed to or was representing Mr. Savage at this time. I only learned of any actual potential or other attorney-client relationship in February 2023 when the Los Angeles Times told me that it planned to run a story on February 9th, 2023, regarding the connection between my ex-husband and Mr. Savage in a case against Volkswagen. I did not know of any other actual or potential agreements or transactions between Tom Girardi and Mr. Savage.
I did not discuss my intent to report my credit card issue to the Secret Service with Tom Girardi before I reached out to the Secret Service. I never asked my husband to contact Mr. Savage on my behalf.
Oh, she didn't talk about it with Tom. I get it.
I wonder why she put that in there. If I were her, I don't know. I'm kind of curious why she's not just laying more blame on Tom, especially, I don't know.
Yeah, why wouldn't she be like, Tom told me to reach out to the guy, Mr. Savage?
Yeah.
It doesn't hurt her to say that. Well, maybe she's being truthful.
Maybe.
Neither Mikey nor Leah was part of my initial conversation with Mr. Savage.
Based on my conversations with Mr. Savage, I was able to schedule a meeting with the Secret Service for December 7th, 2013.
That's a typo. It's 2016.
Yeah. I was like, wait a minute. I'm confused.
Yeah, we went back in time. Because then the next section, she says, on December 7th, 2016, I, Leah, and Mikey went to meet with the Secret Service at the agency's downtown Los Angeles office.
We met with Mr. Savage, who introduced us to the Secret Service agents who would handle the investigation. Kenneth Henderson and Steve Skrinse.
We reported the circumstances surrounding the multiple unauthorized charges on my Amex credit card, including Mr. Sala's admissions that the charges were wrong, his statements that other clients had experienced a similar issue, and his blaming of the bookkeeper.
The meeting was an informational meeting. We did not discuss taking further action. There was no discussion then of setting up a meeting with Mr. Vasila or my wearing a wire.
Then on December 8th, 2016 at 8:37 a.m., Mr. Vasila emailed me admitting that Marco had made multiple mistaken charges to my Amex credit card. A true and correct copy of this email is attached as Exhibit 2.
The email was sent 1 week after Mikey had informed me that Mr. Vasila had... The email was sent 1 week after Mikey had informed Mr. Vasila that I planned to review all of my Amex charges, and after Mr. Vasila had sent me some invoices on December 1, 2016.
In the December 8th, 2016 email, Mr. Vasila wrote, "Hi, Erika. I've been going through orders and credit card statements over and over and am clearly seeing mistakes. I know your schedule is very busy, but if you have time coming up, I would like to go through and come up with a plan to get this sorted."
Yeah, I mean, that doesn't say... I mean, it just says mistakes. That's not the same thing as, like...
Fraud.
Yeah. This email was the third time that Chris had admitted to unauthorized credit card charges. At no point did Chris represent to me, Mikey, or Leah that we were mistaken, and he did not give any other reason for the charges.
Then on the morning of December 9, 2016, Mr. Scarince from the Secret Service sent me my Amex credit card statements from 2013 and 2014.
Leah and I reviewed the two statements, and I did not find any discrepancies in those charges.
I informed Mr. Scarince, Secret Service agent Blair Brown, and Mr. Henderson that same day that, quote, we've reviewed both years and have found nothing that doesn't make sense. All crazy charges begin April 2015 till now. And then she attaches that email.
Later that day, I responded to Chris's email from December 8th, 2019.
Wrong date again.
Yeah, why are these dates?
2016, why do they keep getting the dates wrong?
Yeah, and it says, I don't know, but that's... Okay, it's got to be 2016. Later that day, I responded to Chris's email from December 8th. It says 2019, but she clearly means 2016. I did not respond until after I'd reviewed my 2013 and 2014 Amex statements. I emailed Chris that, quote, I'm available on Wednesday. I can swing by at noon. I then forwarded the email thread with Chris to the Secret Service.
Sometime before my meeting with Mr. Sela on December 14, 2016, the Secret Service approached me about assisting their investigation by wearing a wire and recording my conversation with Mr. Sela. I agreed to their request. It just seems like they're really jumping the gun here, especially if he's willing to meet with them to go over any charges that they think were a mistake. They're like, oh, let's put a wire, like, hold on a second. He hasn't.
Yeah, I mean, that looks like a setup. Let's say you're a doctor and you think one of your nurses is stealing from you, right? And you own your practice. So you would go to your local prosecutor or whoever and say, I think some things are going on. Here's the evidence I have. And then you might try to figure out a way to investigate it or find out. But without some more specific proof, the wheels of justice are slow. This is escalating quickly, which is suspect.
Right. Unless, of course, that they're going above and beyond because they have a relationship with Tom Girardi.
Yeah.
Which is very likely.
On December 14th, 2016, sometime before noon, I, Leah, and Mikey met with the Secret Service. The agents equipped me with a device that would record our conversation with Mr. Sela.
Leah and Mikey then met with Mr. Sela at Marco's office. I recall that Mr. Sela again admitted that there had been mistakes and that Marco had overcharged me by $100,000. Mr. Sela blamed his bookkeeper and said that this has happened to other clients. Mr. Sela asked if we could agree to a payment plan through which he would pay back the overcharges.
This doesn't sound like fraud to me, even if it's true. This sounds like, okay, you've got somebody here who's been your biggest client, who's got a national platform on the most popular Real Housewives franchise. You want to keep the client, somebody that hasn't ever looked at the invoices before, and it's easier to say, okay, yeah, out of this million something dollars, there might be 100,000 that's incorrect. Can I give you a credit or something like that? Because it's going to be business-wise better to keep the client than to really argue with her and have her possibly slam you on national television.
So you don't think any other charges were incorrect?
This is just me editorializing. I think that he was wanting to keep her as a customer and that she was keeping him so busy. All the charges probably were accurate, but then having to go back and find every single text, every time that she had asked for something to be altered or changed, every single email, every single call that was made saying, hey, we want you to do this, this, and this, and every note, that's a lot of time and effort. And this is, like we said, escalating really quickly. Like, he's not having a lot of time, and he doesn't think that the Secret Service is recording anything and trying to come up with a case. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, I have a customer, that's my best customer, that's really upset. To me, it kind of makes sense. What do you think?
Well, I mean, he admitted to 2 charges being incorrect. Like those 2 December charges, she hadn't ordered anything, and there were charges for costumes. So at least 2 were definitely incorrect.
Yeah, he's saying that now, but I think later on he goes back and actually, when he's forced to defend himself and facing prison time, he goes back and he finds that those were in fact requested. I think they were text messages or something.
Well, I want to read that because I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I think just reading what she said in here, like if there were charges for, let's say, $5,000 each for 2 things that she didn't order, that is a lot of money and that raises some alarm bells. And then to admit that, I mean, even if even if he was just skimming some off the top just to make her happy, that would send me into a panic. That's a lot of money. And I would be like, someone needs to be held accountable for this. Maybe not you, maybe the bookkeeper. Like, let's sue the bookkeeper.
Cesie and I are giving our thoughts as we're reading through this. We're kind of giving our real-time analysis. I'm interested to see what the evidence actually is. And I want to hear this recording where he supposedly admitted to this.
Yeah, well, we at least have the email.
Chris's acknowledgement that there had been overcharges in his representations, that the bookkeeper was at fault, were consistent with what he had previously conveyed to Mikey and me. I had no reason to believe that he would admit to a wrong that had not occurred. Based on Chris's statements, I suspected Chris of the unauthorized credit card charges.
Mr. Sela also handed over a stack of hard copy invoices during this meeting. He said that those were not all of the invoices and that he had to get the other invoices.
After my meeting with Chris, Leah and I spent many hours that same day reviewing the invoices from Mr. Sela and trying to match them to the costumes that we had received from Marco Marco. Mikey was not with us, but we called him throughout the day to ask him questions.
We checked our emails, text messages, and performance schedule. We took out any costumes from Marco Marco that was in my closet and counted them. We also reviewed my Instagram account. The Instagram account under the username @thepretty_mess is mine. I own, maintain, and control this account.
I regularly post on my Instagram account, including when I have performances. Leah and I reviewed my account to see what I had worn during my shows in 2015 and 2016. Leah attempted to identify legitimate charges, which would be those charges that correspond to a costume that we knew we had requested for a particular show or performance. Non-legitimate charges were those for which we could not identify a particular costume or invoice.
Based on this review, Leah and I could not account for all of the transactions by Marco Marco on my credit card. When Leah added together the invoice amounts from the invoices that Mr. Sela gave us, the total amount was around $461,000 in charges for the 2 years. This number was much less than the almost $1 million that Marco Marco had charged on my Amex credit card in 2015 and 2016.
We were also still missing many invoices. We only had about 73 invoices, but there were 132 transactions by Marco Marco on my Amex card between 2015 and 2016.
Some of the invoices from Marco Marco described the costume or service provided. However, Leah and I found that the invoices identified far more costumes than we had in our possession.
We shared our results of our review of the invoices with the Secret Service. We also sent screenshots of the December 1, 2016 text messages that Mr. Sela had sent to the Secret Service.
Around this time, I was advised by Mr. Henderson, so he's one of the Secret Service guys, that I should contact Amex's fraud department about the Marco Marco credit card charges on my account. Mr. Henderson advised me to tell American Express that I was working with him and Peter Grimm, an American Express investigator. Mr. Henderson later told me that I should contact Peter Grimm directly. I was unable to get in touch with him until January 2017.
I do not recall what documents I shared with Peter Grimm. I do not know when or how American Express provided a refund. I never received any checks directly. I do not know whether I received a credit from American Express in my credit card account.
Probably because it would have gone to Tom's firm. On the morning of January 11, 2017, Mr. Henderson informed me that the Secret Service had obtained a search warrant for Marco Marco and would execute it that morning. So that's like a month in between her contacting Secret Service initially and them getting a search warrant. Prior to this communication, the Secret Service had not contacted me about a search warrant, and I was not aware that the Secret Service was in the process of obtaining a search warrant. I relayed the information from Agent Henderson to Leah and Mikey just so that they were aware of this development.
In April 2017, the Secret Service informed me that Assistant United States Attorney George Pence from the United States Attorney's Office was preparing to criminally charge Mr. Sela in front of a grand jury and wanted to talk to me. I agreed to speak with Mr. Pence. If you guys have listened to this before, we've talked about the standard for a grand jury, and it's just probable cause. All they do is they present, and there's no defense attorney there. There's no someone giving the other side of the story. It's very, very easy to get a finding of probable cause with the grand jury. All right, paragraph 100. On April 26, 2017, I spoke with Mr. Pence and the Secret Service over the phone. I had not had any prior contact with the U.S. Attorney's Office about the Marco Marco transactions on my Amex credit card.
Mr. Pence explained to me that he had identified 7 transactions as fraudulent and planned to present these transactions to the grand jury. He generally explained the charges that he planned to bring and how the case would proceed. I do not know how Mr. Pence identified these 7 transactions.
After the call, Mr. Pence emailed me the 7 transactions we had discussed. In his email, Mr. Pence asked me to review the transactions and to please call Special Agent Henderson and let him know your thoughts.
Following his instruction, Leah and I reviewed the 7 transactions and the documents that we had. Based on our review, we could not determine that the 7 charges had been authorized. I emailed Mr. Pence back that evening, letting him know that, quote, we reviewed these charges and we have no invoices, no emails, and no texts that support these transactions. I noted, however, I would like to speak to you again to make sure we're not missing anything.
I wanted to talk to Mr. Pence again out of an abundance of caution. I understood that a federal criminal prosecution was a serious matter, and I did not want to falsely accuse Chris of a crime.
I don't know, that email to me, I would like to speak to you again to make sure we're not missing anything. That sounds to me like she wants to make sure they're not missing any false transactions or overcharges. Not necessarily, I want to make sure we're not, like, we don't actually have those costumes and are actually wrong.
Right. Because I agree with you completely. Because to me, it sounds like she's surprised that they only found 7, maybe. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And now she's like, oh, no, I wanted to talk to him because I was like, oops, I want to make sure.
I just want to make sure my friend is not going to get,
No, Erika, your email was, I want to make sure we're not missing anything. But also, like, when she was quoting from The Wire, she says that Chris said that he was still going to look for additional invoices.
Right. And Erika knows all of this is going on, but he thinks everything's fine. He's like, okay, I've sort of fallen on my sword to keep this client. She's continuing to talk to me. He's going through and providing all these invoices. And it's a lot different providing stuff to a customer than thinking, oh, okay, if I don't find every single thing, I might be in jail and get arrested.
Yeah, but the thing is, the prosecutors had his Wire audio as well, so they would have heard him saying, like, I'm going to go back and get all the invoices. So it's kind of messed up that they would continue to proceed with it, knowing that he said, I'm going to go back and find the other invoices. So I feel like a lot of the responsibility here is on the Secret Service and the U.S. Attorney's Office to proceed with this at all.
What we know from the amazing LA Times reporting that's been done and what this Secret Service agent was later fired for, there was a lot of other people that were involved in this that were not doing the right thing, it doesn't sound like.
Right. So, like, she definitely had a big part in it, but, like, the buck almost stops with the prosecutors here. They could have been like, no, we don't have enough evidence, but they decided to proceed with it.
Well, they did drop it.
Eventually, yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, the prosecutors were relying on, okay, the Secret Service has investigated this. I would assume the Secret Service hands you something and are like, these 7 charges we've investigated, that you're going to take it seriously.
Right. Well, that's why I'm saying that.
Yeah.
The prosecutors and the Secret Service. I think Erika was just hoping to find someone to sort through the mess because she keeps saying, I'm not looking at it. I'm not looking at the stuff. She was hoping someone would just sort it out, match it up for her. And then when they came back to her and they're like, oh, we found issues. She's like, okay, do what you have to do. Like, this isn't cool. And they were like, okay, Secret Service investigated it. We're going to proceed. It's messed up. But I can't say it's like completely Erika's fault, which he's suing all these people. So presumably he agrees.
On April 27, 2017, Leah and I spoke on the phone with Mr. Pence and the Secret Service. And again, Mr. Pence is the U.S. Attorney. Leah and I reiterated that we could not find invoices or documentation supporting the 7 transactions that Mr. Pence had identified. Following the call, I did not hear back from the U.S. Attorney's Office. I did not receive any direct communications from anyone at the U.S. Attorney's Office about the case. Neither the U.S. Attorney's Office nor anyone from the Secret Service contacted me to let me know that Mr. Vasela had been indicted on April 28, 2017. I only learned about Chris's indictment later on after I reached out to the Secret Service for updates on the case.
Between 2017 and 2021, which is 4 years,
oh my God,
I received intermittent updates from Mr. Henderson about how Mr. Sala's criminal case was proceeding. I understood that the case had been delayed. Neither Mr. Henderson, so the Secret Service, nor anyone from the Secret Service or from the USAO, the Attorney's Office, contacted me to let me know that Mr. Sala's indictment would be dismissed or had been dismissed on September 29, 2021.
That is a long time to have that hanging over your head.
That's also a long time to, not review all the invoices and just drop it.
Right.
It does not take that long to do the math.
I think sometimes these agencies, and I'm not saying all the time, but I think sometimes they want to be right. And so it's kind of hard to get them to be like, oops, we made a mistake, we're going to dismiss this. I don't know, but that's just a really long time. Erika says, I learned from Twitter that the criminal case against Chris had been dismissed after the fact. When I found out about the dismissal, I called Mr. Henderson to ask why Chris's criminal case had been dismissed after 4 years. Mr. Henderson seemed to blame himself. He told me that he had been a new young agent when he had conducted the investigation of Chris and had overlooked certain things.
Throw Secret Service under the bus.
Yeah.
To this day, I do not know why the USAO moved to dismiss Mr. Sala's indictment. Throughout my interactions with the Secret Service, U.S. Attorney's Office, and Amex, I did not hold any malice towards Mr. Sala. I reported the unauthorized credit card charges on my Amex card to the Secret Service and assisted with the federal investigation and prosecution because I genuinely believed that I did not authorize those charges. Similarly, I reported the charges to Amex because I believed, based on the information I had at the time, that I had been overcharged. At no point did I conspire with the Secret Service, U.S. Attorney's Office, or Amex to fraudulently and maliciously prosecute Mr. Sala. This experience was difficult and distressing at the time. A friend who I had trusted had taken advantage of me. I had to confront that friend about his wrongful conduct. As a result, I not only lost a friend, but ended an important business relationship. And I will never have those beautiful costumes again.
That's not in here.
Yes, that's not in there.
So she says, I declare under the penalty of perjury under the laws of the United States of America that the foregoing is true and correct, executed on October 20, 2023. And then it's docu-signed with just a scribble. Erika Girardi.
Just looking at the exhibits really quickly, she has the email from Amex saying, welcome to your online account on September 19, 2016. That's the first time she ever got access to her account.
And then Exhibit 2. Yeah, Exhibit 2 just says what she said it said.
Mm-hmm. So it's Chris's email to her saying that he went over the transactions and does see mistakes. And she forwards that to the Secret Service and DHS. She didn't mention that before.
Okay, Exhibit 4 is the email from the U.S. Attorney's Office. And it says, it was a pleasure speaking with you this afternoon. The transactions we discussed are identified below. After you've had the opportunity to review them, please call Special Agent Henderson and let him know your thoughts. And so there is a transaction from October 21st, 2015 for $7,500, December 28th, 2015, $8,500, March 29th, 2016, $7,600, and then April 14th, 2016, $9,156, May 23rd, 2016, $9,256.37, June 8, 2016, $10,300.50, and August 10, 2016, $10,355.
That's like roughly $70,000.
Yeah.
To put someone through that for 4 years for $70,000.
I mean, and just like the fact that all of this stuff was likely purchased with money that was stolen from
the cherry on the cake.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you want to read Mikey or Leia's declaration?
Felt like Leia's had some interesting stuff in there. Leia has, a lot of background information, but she talks about the April 26, 2017 analysis in her declaration. And she says she received a list of the 7 transactions that I learned were transactions that the United States Attorney's Office planned to prosecute Chris. And then she reads them out. And then she says, I do not know how the United States Attorney's Office decided on these 7 transactions. I had not previously contacted the U.S. Attorney's Office about which of the Marco transactions on Erika's Amex card were legitimate or not legitimate. And she said, I didn't receive any documents from the United States Attorney's Office. And she said, Eric and I reviewed these transactions and again reviewed any invoices we had, as well as emails or text messages to determine whether the charges matched any costumes or services we had received. And then she said, Erika and I could not find support for the 7 transactions for the following reasons. According to Leia, she said, I did not find an invoice from Chris that was dated October 21, 2015. And then she said she reviewed Erika's performance schedule in 2015, and she did not have any performances in October 2015. And then she said, although Erika had performed twice in September 2015 in San Diego and Las Vegas, I knew that I would have ordered costumes for those shows before the show dates, not a month after the performances. But I mean, he could have just been behind in getting the invoices out. In addition, there were other invoices that I thought were a better match for the costumes Erika had worn during these shows. And then she says, I have reviewed the purported evidence submitted by Chris in support of the October 21, 2015 charge. And she says, Exhibit 1 does not provide an invoice number. The 4 images of Erika performing on page 1 of Exhibit 1 are from the same performance. and show Erika wearing the same costume. They are not 4 different costumes worn on 4 different occasions. She says the text messages on pages 1 and 2 are from August 2015 to November 2015 and appear to discuss different orders.
Oh, this is what we were going through in the complaint, and I noted it seemed like it was for the same costume. So she's just pointing out like the complaint is for the same costume. That's why I want to pull up his exhibits to his declaration, because we were informed that the exhibits there have a proof of every costume.
Right. So basically she's going through and she's saying, for example, we had not ordered costumes for Erika's dancers for the Denver performance, so I believed that there would not be other invoices for that show. She's just going through saying, basically, here's why I didn't think that there would be an invoice for this or that we had an invoice for this, because she ends each one basically saying, I did not think there would be other invoices for the same costumes.
Okay. So Mikey's declaration is basically echoes the facts that Erika put in there. Mm-hmm. It's pretty short. But then Chris files an opposition to the motion to strike, or the anti-slap motion, and includes a declaration. So actually I was going through Chris's declaration because when we were talking about how I was saying, well, he did admit to 2 transactions being wrong. And then later, and you said later, you'll see that he said that they weren't actually wrong. And he does say that in his declaration, that he was sort of confused how they could think that they were incorrect, because I guess it was for certain bodysuits that she ended up wearing on Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. And he had explained it to Mikey many times. And he was like, you know what, fine, I'll just say that you were wrongfully charged and like, we'll figure this out, essentially.
Yeah.
So like you were saying, that he was trying to preserve the business relationship, but then he has support for these transactions in his magnum opus hot doc declaration exhibit.
Yeah.
So yeah, he says, I told him something was, quote, wrong with the intent of keeping his employer and our customer Miss Girardi. I never said that there was any intentional or any actual billing error. I knew of no such thing. I simply used the words like mistake or wrong to keep the situation from escalating and have time to resolve it without losing the customer. I also communicated to Mr. Minden that we had a client a few weeks prior that had an issue with pricing, and that we had adjusted the price to meet the client's budget as an assurance that we were willing to negotiate the price of Miss Girardi. So instead of being, like Erika's declaration portrays it like other people had been inaccurately charged in the past and they were having all these billing errors. Really, when we get Chris's context, and we don't know which is true, these are 2 competing declarations, he's like, oh no, that's not actually what happened. I just renegotiated the price with her. Like if
right.
People think our prices are too high, we're willing to renegotiate with you. Not necessarily that it was wrongfully charged. So
right.
And then includes as exhibit 1B, it's very long. It says Erika Girardi, American Express order transaction history. The following documents show an accounting and evidentiary support for all 132 transactions processed on Erika Girardi's American Express credit card in 2015 and 2016. This document is based on my personal knowledge of each of the 132 transactions in 2015 and 2016. This is an amazing exhibit. So it says custom clothing production and billing process. And it goes through how the consultation works, their dedication to customer service, the approach to the billing process. So they require 50% deposit. The document talks about their procedures and their commitment and their design process, and then also details how the design process functioned with Erika specifically, with Mikey providing initial orders and then going back and forth. So for example, it says with Miss Girardi, we often presented several dozen variations on a theme several times over until the design had been revised to her liking. This could take a dedicated illustrator at our studio between 2 to 5 days, working 8 to 10 hours a day to complete.
That's what I said, that tracks. You have to get your design approved, then you have to create the pattern, and then there's back and forth. That totally tracks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, approach to project planning and billing process. After the design is approved, Marco walks Chris through it, pointing out his estimated material qualities and hours of labor, as well as determining which specialists would be needed to complete the project. Chris will then use this information to generate an invoice based on this information. That invoice is then sent to the client for review and approval before we begin. At this point, we require a 50% deposit to start the project.
Yeah, then they also go through the production process and how they give updates with videos and photos of the design. They provide an example of how they would put crystal embellishments, so rhinestone embellishments, on Erika's costumes, which to me is probably one of the most labor-intensive processes. They have like all the pattern names in here, the different types of embellishments, Swarovski rhinestones or crystals,
And
which
those
are the
aren't
really
cheap.
nice ones.
Yeah. We should post this on our Patreon. This is really interesting.
167 pages. And we won't go through all of these because that would take probably 2 episodes.
But if anybody sews or is interested in sewing, again, it's one of the many hobbies I don't have enough time for, and it's one of the hardest things you can do. He talks about, like, here's why this stuff costs this much. Pattern making is a skilled technique fashion designers, dressmakers, and tailors employ to transform a concept or design into a tangible template used to cut and assemble fabric pieces into a garment. Marco typically uses adhesives, this is for the rhinestones, individually laid to then place the stone. When I can't sleep at night, I somehow got on whatever version of TikTok it is where people are putting very detailed rhinestones on things, and it's like soothing to watch. But just the amount of time.
So then he goes down, breaking it down by transactions. So he labels it transaction 1. And then it has the order, the wardrobe alteration service, the invoice for it, what exactly they did for it, photographs, what the product was or what the result was from Erika's Instagram. I think it was for the backup dancers.
And I have to say, those are some handsome men on there.
And then he puts in the text messages between Leia and himself on this design process or supporting the order. He goes into transaction 2. This is so detailed.
It's so detailed. I love this.
Yeah. I mean, but like, wouldn't you want to do this? Maybe this is what he put in as proof to get the charges dropped. But like, if you were facing that, wouldn't you want to do something like this?
Well, yeah, you're fighting. I mean, you're literally fighting for your life. He couldn't do it right away because they came in and took all of his stuff.
Right. Yeah. You could just tell that this was made out of a lot of anger.
I don't blame him. Okay, here's another thing. Dancer repairs and alterations on customer provided clothing. So this is one of the other things we talked about in the first episode, that the document below constitutes an invoice for the professional service of modifying garments specifically utilized on Erika's male dancers, detailed here as dancer wardrobe alterations. And this invoice represents a periodic financial obligation of fact consistently evidenced throughout this document. For all live performances in 2015, it was customary for Erika's male dancers to engage in a dramatic display wherein their button-down shirts are torn off and propelled into the audience, a spectacle resulting in the routine expense of wardrobe assets for the sake of theatrical effect. To mitigate the financial impact of such performances and to facilitate the aforementioned theatrical effect, Leia, acting in her capacity as assistant to Erika, established the protocol of providing a fresh collection of said dancers' button-down shirts on an ongoing basis for Marco to incorporate quick change fasteners and ensure the ease of the tearaway feature.
And then he has support again from Leia. Hey, can we have a couple boys come in today to fit jacket and pants? Also, I will be dropping off more white shirts. Smiley face. Because they kept breaking.
Yeah.
They needed constant repairs. And then again, dancers, costumes, more alterations, expedited requests, which cost more.
Yeah, since these garments were designed to be removed and discarded into the audience as part of the performance, it was necessary to consistently replenish and tailor new outfits for each event.
And then he also talks about how he made multiple versions of the same design and has pictures. So it's like one of them would be like a mesh with like a strap costume over it. And sometimes it'd be rhinestoned. Sometimes it wouldn't. She would just have multiples of sort of the same design, but slightly altered for her tour.
I mean, honestly, she looks amazing in this one that I'm looking at.
So good.
It looks so good.
Like my goal is to be a drag queen, and she literally is like a drag queen.
It's fitted so perfectly. She can roll around in it. It moves with her body, and it just, even the way the design, so this whole thing's sheer, and there's strategic, opaque sort of spandex straps in it.
Boobs.
Yeah. And it emphasizes the shape of her body in such a beautiful way.
Okay, well, I think the rest is more of the same, but again, it's 167 pages just of every single transaction, and then photo proof, text message proof. This is like the hot doc in this case.
Why didn't they show more of her background dancers on Real Housewives of Beverly Hills?
I think they did.
Okay, yeah, here's another of the same design, but now with rhinestones on it.
Yeah, and then she got it in red, she got it in black, and she got it in like blue.
I mean, and she looks so good in these
Okay,
designs.
I think we should move on from this.
Yeah, I'm getting
document,
distracted by the
Yeah.
costume designs, but we'll post this on our Patreon for you guys. I love the drawings. Sorry, I'm kind of obsessed with this now because the drawings are so cool. Okay,
What do we do next?
So I thought maybe the next thing we would do is read the highlighted portions that I did of the transcript.
Okay.
I think it's really interesting to hear the questions the court asks, and there's some really good advocacy on both sides. Erika's attorney does an excellent job with the oral advocacy here, and so does Chris's attorney. And the court asks really, really good questions.
And her attorney is the same one that she's had on everything.
Yeah.
Okay, so we are splitting this up. The next episode, we'll have John reading the part of Erika's lawyer. Cesie is the judge, and I am Marco's lawyer, and it will be out very shortly. Just finishing the edits on that as I am packing for Cesie's bachelorette. So cheers, everyone, and enjoy. And I hope you wish us well for our fun weekend. All right, bye, legal team.